Welcome to a new Daily Top Askreddit video. Today's topic.
If Charlie Kirk had been a liberal activist instead of a conservative, how do you think the media and politicians would have reacted to his death? Seems like you could look to the assassination of Melissa Hortman for that. They would cover it, say it was bad, and then quickly move on. In fact, it was covered so little that when Kirk was killed, plenty of people didn't even seem to know or remember it happened only 3 months ago. Or when Paul Pelosi was attacked. They literally just made fun of him and called him gay. Just last month, the CDC building was shot hundreds of times and a police officer was killed by a right-wing nutjob spouting the same anti-vax nonsense as RFK Jr. It was barely reported on and the president never even addressed it. The video elevates it quite a bit. I remember Ray Rice, NFL player, domestic assault came out. Some criticism, couple game suspension. Then the video came out. Public outcry, full season suspension. Cut from his team. There was no new info in the video, but seeing something happen changes perception. Edit, for the record, I don't agree with Kirk's ideology and am not defending ambivalence on other killings. I just think it hits different. The fact that we got multiple fairly high-res videos of the bullet hitting his neck and blood gushing out does make a difference. The news gets shared more and more people engage with the news out of shock value and morbid fascination, which gives it more traction. Had Paul Pelosi been shot while several cameras were filming it, it would have also become much bigger than it became. Edit, lol, the comments really bring the average Redditor reading comprehension out on display. People really seem to think I'm saying that Republicans are lovely defenders of free speech or something to that effect. It's fucking weird. I think if the videos of school shootings ever get released, maybe more people will be pissed about them. But I understand why they don't release them. Those videos should be shared and retweeted to all the politicians who take money from NRA. A reminder that Utah Senator Mike Lee said, "This is what happens when Marxists don't get their way," after Vance Bolter, a Republican, murdered the Hortmans and injured others. Lee would go on to post, "Nightmare on Wall Street, because they do not understand what bipartisanship is. Till in office." Edit, this comment blew up lol. You won't believe this, but my cousin thinks that Bolter was a Marxist because he was on an advisory council, and those advisory councils take and allocate government funds, and distributing government money is socialist, Marxist. All the other overwhelming evidence to the contrary is just a big coincidence. So your cousin unironically believes that communism is when the government does things at all. Goddamn. We would have heard more about the school shooting that day. I'm just now seeing on Reddit about a boy laying on top of his friend to save him during a school shooting. I had no idea that even happened. That shooter's social media has already shown that he's a far-right neo-Nazi groper type as well. Literally 2 far-right neo-Nazi gropers did school shootings on the same day, and all anyone can talk about is how the left did it. The same way those Democratic politicians that were murdered got treated. Just shy of open hostility from the right-wing media and leadership. The right were calling for war then as well. Until the killer came out to be yet another conservative extremist. Most of the social media I'm seeing still is threatening violence towards progressives. Do you recall Melissa Hortman? They would react like that. I generally agree. However, Kirk's death was on zoomed-in camera and more visceral. I think that made the coverage different. A lot more people also knew Charlie Kirk's name before Wednesday. He was treated like a celebrity death, which will always get more coverage than a not nearly as well-known politician. A lot of people are looking at the Hortman assassination as an example, but she was a relatively unknown state politician. Not to minimize it, but that's just the fact. I don't think the left really has somebody you can quite compare to Charlie Kirk in terms of influence over the youth, which might be indicative of the problem, but I digress. I think if Kamala Harris had been shot during her campaign, or somebody like Bernie Sanders or AOC was assassinated, it would make bigger headlines, and probably be covered as more of a tragedy than Charlie Kirk's assassination. I do also think at least your more mainstream conservatives would condemn the violence, and even though more right-wing conservatives might be, secretly, cheering it, they would probably express condemnation of political violence. I suspect that's what most liberals and center-leftists are doing right now. Candidly, I think the reason this has blown up so much is because of how incredibly graphic the video of his assassination was. There's a reason the JFK assassination has remained in the public zeitgeist for so long. Obviously, he was a president, but if somebody had just blasted him with a pistol while shaking hands and kissing babies, I really don't think it would be something we talked about all the time in the way that we do. I realize most of us on Reddit have been at least unfortunate enough to stumble across meat crayon, but the general public doesn't usually watch videos of people having their brainstem bifurcated and blood spewing out of their neck in a way that might make the directors of John Wick tell the props department to cool it with the special effects. 100% agreed with both of your points. Not only was Kirk way more well-known than Hauptmann, he also had an incredibly passionate following. That paired with the video is the answer. That's an interesting take. I think Hassan Piker might be the closest we got as a comparison to Kirk, as his audience is pretty large and young. I think if the video wasn't recorded, the news of his death would not have been as widespread. Hassan Piker wouldn't be nearly as comparable because Hassan isn't as ingratiated to the Democratic political establishment as Kirk was to the Republican political establishment. I feel like the government is trying to guide this country to a civil war. Fanning the flames of conflict, fostering hate between political parties, polarizing them at every opportunity. They'd have blown it up either way. Because a population divided against itself is too busy fighting to unite against the corrupt government leeching off of it. Pretty sure Trump even said something about how he's not interested in mending the divide and that right-wing extremists exist because they're tired and really want to help their communities or something like that, while left-wing extremists are just evil. So yeah, the dude absolutely is eager to see blood in the streets. It's about distracting everyone while he, his family, his billionaire donors loot the country. What gave you a hint when the president encouraged a violent mob on the Capitol building? Didn't Trump mock Nancy Pelosi's husband when some right-wing nutjob tried to murder him with a hammer? I remember. Charlie himself said the guy should be bailed out by a hero. Live by political violence, die by political violence, I guess. TH's is the guy they want us to have empathy for. I'm not happy that he is dead, but I'm not exactly sad either. You don't have to speculate. 2 Democrats were shot just a few months ago, 1 was killed, and the media and right-wing politicians largely glossed over it. Trump said calling walls would be a waste of time. Quote, while horrific, the Hauptmanns weren't famous. The analog here is if someone who is fairly well known were to get shot, like Hassan or Jon Stewart or something along those lines. I feel like that would have caused quite a big uproar, like when someone broke into Nancy Pelosi's house to kill her and bashed her husband's skull in. What was reaction? Kirk himself called for his supporters to bail the guy out of jail and people on the right were making fun of the attack. I think it's insane that being a celebrity is more important than being a literal representative of the people. Well, he wouldn't be getting any Medal of Freedom, that's for sure. Removed. Plenty of large right-wingers would make fun of it. Plenty of right-wing political leadership would be quiet. Some of the ones with some semblance of a soul would say, wow, that is not good. Trump would somehow find a way to make fun of it, encourage the behavior to happen to others against him, whilst simultaneously convincing his base that he is actually saying it is bad that someone died. Any coverage that does happen would still somehow blame a lefty for the assassination with no evidence. Assumptions of the person being trans and mentally ill would be rampant, and no reckoning of how the right's rhetoric, specifically Trump and his administrations, may have caused this sort of behavior. About like when Pelosi's husband got hit with a hammer and they tried to make it into a gay drug deal gone bad. Charlie Kirk himself asked his supporters to bail out the attacker too. Republicans really are literally their own boogeyman. Night and day. Reddit would treat him like the second coming of Jesus. The reaction would be the reaction there was to George Floyd's death. The Democrats would have said, we need to be nicer to conservatives, they feel powerless and are lashing out, what rights should we give up this time? And the Republicans would be saying, how dare the left try to use this tragic death caused by a clearly disturbed person with no political agenda whatsoever for the political gain. They should give up more of their rights. Also, trans people are an abomination. Absolutely. Anyone who thinks otherwise has been sleepwalking through the last decade. But if we show compassion and meet them in the middle, maybe they'll be our friends. If Charlie Kirk had been a liberal activist instead of a conservative, he never would have been killed in the first place. 2 Democratic Minnesota state reps were shot in their home by a man with a long list of other Democrats. The president made fun of the incident, it was in the news for a day, and nothing fundamentally changed. When Paul Pelosi was attacked with a hammer, he was made fun of by Fox News hosts. All kinds of nonsense circulated about how he was secretly gay and his attacker was a slighted lover. If Charlie Kirk had been a liberal activist, people wouldn't be getting doxxed and losing their jobs for being rightfully critical of his platform and who he was. The president would be on Truth Social making jokes about it, conservatives would be peddling every conspiracy and fake story under the sun to blame everyone but themselves. There would be weak calls from leftists for gun reform that would be laughed off by Republicans calling them cowards and giving the usual spiel of thoughts and prayers, and guns don't kill people, people kill people. They would escape all accountability for speaking ill of the dead that conservative figurehead and people on the left themselves are enforcing in the current eulogized whitewashing of Kirk and his disgusting trash record, and then the news would stop talking about it the next day because the president decided to deploy the army in another US city. It's been driving me up the wall seeing all the nonsense from places like conservative about how this is war, and the intolerant left, like there's collective amnesia over how much sympathy is given whenever anything bad happens to anyone aligned with the right and how little is given every other month when a trans person, or someone who was only perceived to be transgender is attacked. Members of the press are attacked by the army who have been deployed domestically, a clinic that provides gender-affirming care or abortions is firebombed, a Democratic political office is shot up, an LGBT venue is shot up and the memorial is painted over, etc. We know exactly how things would have played out had Charlie Kirk been a liberal activist, and it's infuriating that so many people have collective amnesia over how incidents of violence against leftists played out just a few months ago. Anyways, end of rant. And Don Rump Jr. made fun of Pelosi. Mike Lee Utah made jokes about the assassination of the Democratic lawmakers. This is exactly correct. Every word of it.